It is 1967. Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt have just won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in an all-American machine. Not a high-strung Formula One engine. Not a hand-built Italian exotic. A modified NASCAR block from a Ford Galaxy, developed in Dearborn, Michigan, by engineers who had never built an endurance racer before. That engine hit 213 miles per hour down the Mulsanne Straight. It ran for 24 hours, almost without complaint. And less than 6 months after the checkered flag dropped, the governing body of international motorsport convened an emergency meeting and changed the rules specifically to make sure it could never happen again. Ford had built the most dominant endurance engine in American history. The moment they proved it could win anywhere on Earth, the world made sure they could not keep it. The story does not start in 1967. It starts in 1963, in a boardroom, not on a racetrack, and with a business deal that collapsed so badly, it launched one of the most expensive engineering projects in American automotive history. That boardroom failure had a name attached to it: Enzo Ferrari. In 1963, Henry Ford II had come close to buying Ferrari outright. Negotiations ran for months. Ford accountants flew to Maranello and audited the factory. Contracts were drafted. Then, days before signing, Enzo pulled out, reportedly enraged that the deal would have stripped him of control over his racing program. Ford walked away humiliated, and Lee Iacocca greenlit the most expensive racing project in American corporate history. The goal was specific: beat Ferrari at Le Mans. The problem was equally specific. None of Ford's 350,000 employees knew how to design a mid-engine endurance racer. So Ford did something unusual for a company its size. It hired the people who did. Eric Broadley, the founder of Lola Cars, designed the chassis. John Wyer, who had won Le Mans with Aston Martin in 1959, managed construction. The car that emerged was 40 inches tall, mid-engine, and aerodynamically aggressive. It was the Ford GT40, and it was immediately, embarrassingly slow. The 1964 prototype failed. The 1965 version failed again at Le Mans, handing Ferrari a 6th consecutive win. The breakthrough came from an engineer named Roy Lunn, and from a philosophy that the Europeans never expected an American company to apply at the top level of endurance racing. The idea was called lazy leaders. Instead of chasing Ferrari's high-revving, high-tech approach, the P3's V12 would spin past 8,000 revolutions per minute in a car displacing roughly 4 liters. Ford went the other direction entirely: 7 liters of displacement, a 427 cubic inch block pulled straight from Ford's NASCAR program, an engine that any Ford dealer in America had sitting in a Galaxy on the showroom floor. The Ferrari could rev higher. The Ford did not need to. What Lunn's team did with that block was the real engineering story. The cylinder heads, intake manifold, water pump, and timing cover were recast in aluminum. A magnesium oil pan replaced the iron original. The engine dropped from 685 pounds to 580 pounds. A custom dry sump oiling system built both its pressure and scavenge pumps inside the oil pan. No external pump, no drive belt, full protection under the high cornering loads of a 24-hour road race. The exhaust used a bundle of snakes, cross-bank header design borrowed from Coventry Climax Formula One applications, correcting exhaust scavenging, with a production-style crankshaft. The rev limit was set at 6,400 revolutions per minute, not because the engine could not go higher, but because it did not need to. In 1966 race trim, it produced 485 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque, detuned from a potential 550 horsepower. Ford built an early road load dynamometer to simulate the exact speed and load cycles of Le Mans, Daytona, and Sebring, ensuring that output would hold for 24 continuous hours. At the Romeo test track in Michigan, Ken Miles, the engineer-driver who had been developing the GT40 since 1965, took the wheel of the new 427-powered car. he hit 210 miles per hour. When Roy Lunn asked for his evaluation, Miles said, "That is the car I want to drive at Le Mans this year." In 1965 practice at Le Mans, the GT40X set a lap record of 3 minutes 33 seconds, nearly 5 seconds faster than the Ferraris. The engine worked. The gearbox, rebuilt in a rush before shipping, did not. Ferrari won their 6th straight, but Ford's engineers knew exactly what they had. In 1966, with 3 teams and 8 GT40 Mark IIs at Le Mans, they proved it. Ferrari's 6-year winning streak ended. Ford took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It was the first time an American manufacturer had won a major European race since a Duesenberg crossed the line in the 1921 French Grand Prix. The lazy litter's philosophy, built in Dearborn from a NASCAR block, had beaten the finest European racing machinery on its own ground. The engine had proven everything it needed to prove. What came next is where Ford's own institution turned on the people who built it. The 1966 Le Mans win should have been the cleanest moment in the GT40 program's history. It wasn't. Ken Miles had been the primary development driver for the 427 engine. He had logged thousands of miles testing that engine in conditions that had already killed one other test driver, Walt Hanskin, who died testing a J car at Le Mans in April 1966, 5 months before the race. Miles kept testing. By June, he had won the 24 hours of Daytona and the 12 hours of Sebring. He was leading Le Mans, reportedly by as much as 1 full lap, when Ford racing manager Leo Beebe ordered something no driver could have anticipated: a formation finish, a publicity photo, 3 Fords crossing the line side by side. Miles followed orders. He slowed. He let Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon close the gap. The cars crossed the line almost together. Then, French race officials made a ruling. Because McLaren's car had started approximately 20 meters further back on the grid, it had technically covered 8 meters more distance during the race. By that margin, McLaren and Amon were declared the winners. Ken Miles, who had led the race, who had won Daytona and Sebring, who would have been the first driver in history to win all 3 endurance classics in a single year, was classified second. Miles was quoted afterward, "Thus ends my contribution to this bloody motor race." 2 months later, on August 17, 1966, Ken Miles was killed at Riverside International Raceway. He was testing the J car, Ford's next-generation racer, at over 200 miles per hour. The car flipped. Miles was ejected. Ford's investigation attributed the crash to mechanical failure. The exact cause was never definitively identified. His son Peter, not yet 16 years old, witnessed the accident. That was the first betrayal, institutional, quiet, and permanent. The second came louder and faster. In 1967, the Mark IV arrived at Le Mans. It was the only race car designed and assembled entirely in the United States ever to win Le Mans outright. Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt, an All-American crew, took it to 213 miles per hour on the Mulsanne and held on for 24 hours to win. It was the fastest and most reliable endurance car America had ever built. Victory. Immediately after the race, the Commission Sportive Internationale, the FIA regulatory body, convened an emergency meeting. The stated reason was safety. The cars were too fast and the Mulsanne too dangerous. The result was a decision that effectively banned the big block Fords from top-level competition. From 1968 onward, Group 6 prototypes were limited to 3 liters, matching Formula One regulations. The 427 cubic inch engine, all 7 liters of it, was outlawed in a single meeting. Ford and Ferrari both had their factory programs made obsolete overnight. No warning, no consultation with manufacturers. The ruling came down in the immediate aftermath of the race. The 427 cubic inch engine had just dominated. The 3-liter rule left Ford with 2 choices: walk away from factory prototype racing entirely, or build a new engine to compete on the FIA new terms. They chose the second option. Ford's UK division commissioned a new prototype, the P68. built around the 3-liter Cosworth DF-VV8 that had debuted successfully in Formula One. In theory, a rational decision. In practice, catastrophic. Across the entire 1968 and 1969 racing seasons, not one Ford P68 or its successor, the P69, finished a single race. Every entry retired. Every development dollar spent on the program produced 0 results at the checkered flag. Ford UK eventually pulled the plug on both projects without a single classified finish. Meanwhile, the GT40 program's actual legacy played out through a regulatory loophole. JW Automotive entered the 1968 and 1969 Le Mans races with old Mark I cars running a 302 cubic inch Windsor 5.8 in the Group 4 sports class. They won. The same chassis, GT40P1075, won back-to-back in 1968 and 1969. The platform the 427 had built was still capable of winning Le Mans. The engine that defined it had been regulated away. On American roads, the story was quieter, but no less final. Ford had built the GT40 Mark III as a street-legal version of the racer. 7 were built in total. Ford kept 4 for promotional use. 3 were sold to customers. The most significant endurance racing engine program in American history produced a street car that 3 people were able to buy. In spring 1968, Ford replaced the 427 in its passenger car lineup with the 428 Cobra Jet, cheaper to manufacture and easier to install. The racing engine's commercial development died on a cost-benefit spreadsheet. Think about what was buried with it. The 427's lazy litters approach had 3 years of development momentum behind it when the FIA rule change cut it off. The Mark IV hit 213 miles per hour at Le Mans and finished the race. The P68, its 3-liter replacement, never finished one. GT40 P1075 won Le Mans in 1968 and 1969 using a smaller engine. What would the 427 have done with 2 more years of refinement? The answer is buried in a regulatory archive and in 3 road cars that ordinary Americans never got close to. In 2018, one of the 1966 Mark II race cars sold at RM Sotheby's for $9.8 million. That's the market's verdict on what the 427 program was worth. The FIA gave its verdict in a meeting room 6 months after the 1967 race. So what does this actually tell us? Ford built the most effective endurance racing philosophy America ever produced out of a production car engine. The lazy leaders approach, torque over revs, displacement over technology, reliability over exotic engineering, is the same principle American endurance programs have returned to again and again since. It worked in 1966, it worked in 1967, and the platform that carried it won again in 1968 and 1969 with a smaller engine, because the chassis was simply that good. The engineers were right. The regulators changed the rules. The accountants replaced the engine with something cheaper. And exactly 3 Americans ever got to drive a road-legal version of what Roy Lund's team built in Dearborn. You now know the real story, not the trophy photograph, not the movie. The question for the comments is this: was the FIA's 1967 rule change a legitimate safety response to dangerous speeds on the Mulsanne, or was it international motorsport protecting its establishment from an outsider that had walked in with a production car engine and beaten everyone on their own ground? Drop your answer below. Subscribe if you want more of the stories that Detroit's official history forgot to tell you. I'll see you in the next one.